Welcome to a TN275 tutorial. For this session, we are going to be setting up a two-tier Class B network. And I've already started here with the CMO networking tool, the generator tool here. And this is a handy little tool to give you practice and also to get you ready for the upcoming TN classes that you'll be taking that deals with the different types of routing, VLANs, and also the network size. But this evening we're going to be working with a Class B two-tier network. With no VLANs and with static routing. Again, as you progress further in your TN classes, you'll be able to use RIP, OSPF, and EIGRP. To save time, I already have our packet tracer that we're going to be working with, and by now you should be able to understand the basic fundamentals on how to navigate through packet tracer. One word of advice I would recommend is that if you are not familiar with Packet Tracer, it's a free download. Please take it home and play around with it. It will only benefit you in the long run. So what I've done is I went ahead and I've already set up the two-tier network. No configurations, because we'll do that. We'll do that this evening here, and we'll get that configured. Also, I've went ahead and labeled everything. And I'll explain how we got all these numbers here, these networks, in a moment. But one thing I have to mention, and it is very important, and you will see this as you progress further in your TN classes, is labeling. It is very important, especially when it comes time to take your skills test, to label everything. And also when we're putting in the configuration, as you'll see, how important labeling is. So I went ahead and generated a network, the network that's here. So what we have here is a 1011, a 0.0/16 from the CMO network tool. This is a handy tool because it gives you, since we're only dealing with a two-tier network, we're actually going to be subnetting for networks instead of host, which is the way I usually do it, but I will show you a quick way to get your subnet. So with this tool, the handy thing is if you run into a problem, you can always click on it. And if, say, you forget how to do the interface command or what interface to, needs to be where, it will actually give you the commands that you'll need to put into the router. So, and also, one thing that we're doing is static route. It'll give you the command on what to do the static route to the next hop, which is going to be this external face on this router. Also, the switch, it walks you through some of the basic switch commands. The most important thing to remember when doing a switch, when putting in the commands for a switch, is do not forget the IP default gateway. If you do not put that in there, these guys down here will not know how to get over to here. Now the computers, that's self-explanatory with putting in the IP information there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cable the network. Like I said, I went ahead and have it set up, and we're going to cable this network. Now we know that unlike devices, or like devices such as these two routers, get a crossover cable. And usually what I do, and again this is your preference, is I use the 00 to go across and the 01 to go down. Now you may ask why I do that. I do that because as you expand beyond just a two-tier and you get into your three-tier and beyond networks, it's about consistency. And I know that right now that when we're doing the routers, when we're putting in the command lines, I know that 00 is always my external facing, and that way I don't get them confused, which is really easy to do. So with unlike devices, we do a copper straight through. And again, what port you put it on is strictly up to you, but it's all about consistency. If you do it on one network, I would highly recommend doing it on the other. So we'll go here, put that there, put that there. Okay, so we have our network basically cabled. Now, we originally started this network off, and here, this is a little sheet that will help you here. We started off with a 10.11.0.0/16, which is a huge network. I mean, we're talking like over 64,000 IP addresses just for that network. Now, what we need is, since we are doing by networks first, we are subnetting for the networks, we need to determine how many networks that we have. So we have one, we have two. And don't forget that the WAN itself is a network. So we have 3 networks right there. And since we oscillate by 4, and that's a /16, we know that 4 more networks is a /18. So it takes 4 of these /18 networks right here. Because we can't do 3, we can only do 4. It takes 4 of these to do the /16. So since it is a 192, and again, I set this little sheet up here, this little subnet sheet. This is something that Robbie's done in class, and this is the way that I use it. Most people call this the old style way, old school way. But this is something that you can quickly put down on paper so you don't have to rely on a subnet calculator. What I've already done is I've set up the host. You know, it's 1, 2, and then it doubles all the way down. And also, I've done the CIDRs. Now, we already know, starting from 256, and this should be your key on remembering this, that 256 is a /24 and a .255. So the /24, as your CIDRs get smaller, your host get larger. But it's vice versa. When you go, as the CIDRs get larger, the amount of hosts that you could have gets smaller. So we know that the /18, that the subnet for that is a 192. Now, what I do personally, and not to get confusing, because if you start working in the 2nd and 3rd octet, which this right here is the 3rd and this is the 4th, I always come down to the 4th octet and I work in here. And so what I do is, since that is a 192, a /18, since that is a 192, I know that my networks are going to oscillate by 64. The host is 64. So this went from a /16 to a /18. And as you could tell, this is why my networks are labeled the way they are. So my first one is a 0.0, which is right up here. So my first network out of the chute was the 10.11.64.0. Then my next, since it doubled, that would be the 128. So 64 and 128. So let's go ahead and get these configured. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open this up. Okay, just hit enter, or no. Okay, so we're going to enable config T. Now remember, this one right here is our outside interface. So we know that that is already on 0/0. So we're going to do IP address 10.11.64.1. We'll put in our subnet mask. No shut. Important, please do not forget to do no shut. So we'll go down here. So we'll do intg0/1 IP address. It's going to be 10.11.192.1. Sorry about that. .252. Now there's our 252. That is our /22. That is our /22 CIDR. And this is the subnet for a /22 is 252. And then we're going to do a no shut. Now, as you can see, your line will turn green, but that doesn't mean we're completely done here. Now what we need to do is, since we are doing static routing, we need to come up and determine how we're going to get from here to here, since this network doesn't know about this network and that network doesn't know about this one. So what we're going to put in is a static route, which is basically going to say anything in this network that any of this that the network does not know is going to send it out of this interface over to here. So it's the kind of your last resort out of the network. So we'll go ahead and, since we already know, again, by labeling here, we already know the external interface of this router, which is right here. We're going to go ahead and put in that external route. So we're going to do IP route. Whoops. 0.0.0.0.0.0.0.0, and we're going to do 10.11.64.2. Oh, forgot to go to config T. So IP route 0.0.0.0. So 10.11.64.2. Okay. So then what we want to do is usually config T int gi 0/0. I do a shut and then a no shut. To make that route take. So then what we'll do is over here, then we'll open this router up. No, we'll hit enable config T. We're going to do int g0.0. We're going to do IP address. And then here, let me pull that down a little bit. So we'll do IP address of 10.11.64.2, 255.255, no shut. Okay, so now the routers can ping in between each other. However, if I was to come down here to this guy right here and try to ping over to here, it does not know how to get out of this network. So with that being said, we're going to go to INT. Let's go ahead and give the internal facing router its interface. Let's give it an IP address. So INT G0/1. So we're going to do IP address of 10.11.128.1.255.255.252.0. No shut. Okay. So now we can exit out of that, and now we can do our IP route. So that's basically saying any traffic that you don't know anything about, send over to this interface right here. Okay. So then we're going to go INT G00, and then we're going to do a shut, and then we're going to do a no shut, just to make that route propagate in between. So now that we got our routers talking back and forth, so just to make sure, we'll exit all the way out and we'll ping over to the other router just to make sure that this portion is set up correctly. And as you can see, we can ping between the routers, so we know they're talking back and forth. So let's go down here. So since this is a /22, there are 4 networks that we can, for this whole network here, that we can play around with. So here, let's get all these over here. So now what we can do is I started out, and again, it's a preference. I usually do the very first IP for the router and the very last for the switch, with the second to the last for the PC. Again, strictly up to you, personal preference, but as long as you're consistent across the board, you shouldn't have any issues. So now with the switch, we're going to go ahead and get into the switch. We're going to enable. We're going to do a config T. Again, very similar to the way you would do a router. Okay, and then we're gonna put this on. We're gonna get into the VLAN 1, and again, to be able to manage a switch, we have to give it an IP address. One of the VLANs has to have an IP address so that we can remotely get to it. So we're going to put it on the management VLAN, which is VLAN 1 for this tutorial, and then we're going to give it an IP address. Now, this is the last usable IP address in this /22 network. And again, my preference is I always use the last one so that if I put it in, or if I have addressed it, I know what the address is. So we're going to do a 10.11.195.254, and we're going to give it the subnet mask of 255.255.252.0. And again, very important on this, do a no shut to turn on that VLAN. As I mentioned earlier in this video, we have to put in the default gateway. And the default gateway basically lets us know any traffic going from here, where to go and how to get out. So the default gateway is your internal facing interface of the router. So that's going to be 10.11.192.1. Alright, so we can exit out of there, and then we can do a ping to the gateway to see if it works. And it takes a moment for it to build a route tables, as you can see, a success rate. And so now we can try to, let's try to go to, and again, it could ping this interface, and let's see if the route has taken. And now we can ping across. So now we can ping from here to here to here and all across to the other router, which lets us know that from this switch to this router we have traffic. So now let's go ahead and close that out. Now let's go ahead and IP address our PC. Again, this is pretty straightforward. 10.11.195.253 255.255.252.0. Very important, make sure you put in the gateway. The gateway is actually the gateway for the router. And again, you would ping. And so now from here, from this PC here to this router, we can ping back and forth. So let's go into this switch here. Let's move that over here so we can see our config. So enable. Let's do a show run. Let's do a show run. Let's make sure here. Alright. See, VLAN 1 has no IP address. Okay, so we'll do a config T. And then we'll do an INT. So we're going to do int VLAN 1. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and do an IP address of 10.11.131.254 with this at 255.255.252.0. Remember to do a no shut to turn that on. Okay, and then most importantly, do our IP default gateway. And that is going to be the internal interface of the router. So it's going to be a 10.11.128.1. Okay, so we can do a ping to 10.64. 11.64.2. It takes a moment for the route table to build, and then we'll try to ping across, and we can ping across. So let's go down here, and we'll quickly put this IP information in. 10.11.131.253. Again, I know the IP ranges. I mean, if you wanted to, you can go through here and you can stick 128.2.3. However, what we're trying to simulate here is this being a very large network, and so that's why 131 is the last. 131.254 is the last usable in this /22. So we'll do 255.255.252.0, and then the default gateway is 10.11.128.1. Okay. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's try to ping over to here. And look at that. So now we can ping from here all the way over, and this has completed our network. So to cover, I will put this in with the with this tutorial, and this will help you with your subnetting. This is really handy to have also right before test to study this, and once you get the tricks down, especially knowing that a /24 is a 256, 255, and working your way to the left and right from there, you should have no problems. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Again, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask. I appreciate your time, and good luck.